So a lot of times we put a lot of emphasis on motivation.
Yeah.
Motivation is cool, but if you have decided what you value in life, then your actions should always align with your values, whether you're motivated to do it or not.
Yeah.
Hey yo, pimpin' on the east side. I know this a West Coast beat, but it's a freestyle. I've been kinda stressed and I freaked out. Good thing I got a brain that could reroute. That shit ain't got nothing to do with me.
All right, so what's up, friend?
What's good?
How you doing?
Back at it. I'm all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Like, I'm excited. We're here. We're doing this episode today.
Episode
it's
3.
very much like impromptu. We decided that we're not going to have like a topic.
Yes. We're just
Ain't no anchoring point.
let the spirit lead us.
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? I think it would be nice to have an episode where we kind of just like co-create with spirit and kind
Yeah.
of just like see what happens.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah.
How you feeling about it? I'm a control freak, so I'm like,
I mean, you know what? I think I feel good about it because it's just always nice to connect with your people and your collaborators and your community and even if there's no set purpose, like just for fellowship. So I think that is enriching in itself and valuable in itself. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
So you and I were talking this week. You know, we were texting back and forth, and you were talking a little bit about like trying to create structure in
and
your life and in your process. And I was like, well, how's that going? How you doing, friend? And you was like, it's not going too well.
Yeah. No, it was not really sticking. A thing that I've learned recently that I was not aware of, but I have ADHD.
Gotcha.
And once I got diagnosed and started getting context for certain things, it made me revisit. I was like, oh, okay, this has been a thing.
Right.
And so it's been interesting to have that insight because it allowed me to sort of make sense of a lot of things that I've struggled with for a long time and that I wasn't really giving myself particular grace with. So I've been looking into a lot more like tools and ways to support myself with that and, you know, of course, not become this diagnosis or become these letters and what that looks like. So it's like, okay, I really need to buckle down on structure and schedules. I crave those things because it's so out of reach, or I have these sort of barriers to being able to focus or the disconnect between, you know, what I envision and the motivation, but actually applying the structure and getting things in order has really still been a challenge. So, you know, I like wrote out a schedule for like my daily thing, like, okay, like I'm gonna work within these windows and this will be my visual art time and this will be my literary art time.
Okay.
But I have
Just wasn't working.
Yeah, I haven't been sticking to it, and you know, the motivation has been a big issue for me, which is a common thing, you know, with ADHD, because it very much so has to do with, I guess, a deficiency in dopamine and like how that, you know, impacts, you know, the sense of like reward or whatever value in actually pursuing a thing. So a lot of times you'll hear people who have ADHD, they may describe doing something like at the last minute, but it's like that'll give them the spark and the push to be like, and it's like they'll get something done and they'll be hyper fixated or focused, but that's not really like sustainable or ideal when you have multiple things that you maybe want to tend to and see through. So I've really been, just kind of feeling like in limbo and not.
So what is ADHD? Because I think it's like at least just from like your perspective,
Right,
obviously,
right.
like you're not a doctor,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we
yeah.
can't help, you know, like we can't do the medical thing, but
Right,
like
right.
for some context, because I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of hear that kids or people having it like, oh, they just can't focus.
Right, right.
And it's like, is it just that, or like from your perspective, like where did that diagnosis come from for
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I mean, so that's a great question, and it's ADHD, attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So it's has it impacts decision making, things like impulsivity, again, motivation or lack thereof, a lot of things like mood swings. You could be really, really, really up, like 1 minute, and then very, very, very down, like the next. And so dealing with like things in extremes, you can not get anything done Monday through Thursday, and then Friday comes around and you're in like a hole for 6 hours and you like complete a whole project. So those are some of the ways that it can look. And yeah, so it's showing up a lot like that for me, you know, and it can be beneficial in some ways because, you know, I can amass like a skill or a knowledge, you know, base in a short period of time, and you know, go to applying it, and I have lots of different awareness and of different, you know, topics and ideas. But it also can look like starting a bunch of things and like not completing any of them, or starting a bunch of things, not completing them, and then like losing interest altogether, and then like going on to another thing. In a way that, for me, it's like not even having the awareness that I'm doing that sometimes. It's just like, okay, like, you know, I get sidetracked very easily. So it's like, okay, let me sit and work on this project. And then I'm like, something takes me over here, like my laundry, and then I'm doing the laundry thing. And I'm just like, oh man, this shirt is missing a button. And then I go to sew this button on the shirt. And I'm like, wait, is this the way to stitch the button? And then I'm like going onto a YouTube video. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
You know, and then X amount of hours later, I haven't done the laundry.
Has completely been finished.
The project I was originally doing, it's, you know, so yeah. And it's like the end of the day, and then I'm feeling shitty because
you didn't finish anything.
Yeah. So, and sometimes that can snowball into just like a judgment of just my inability to focus, you know, because I wish in my heart of hearts that it was as simple as like being like, all right, just focus, just sit, you know what I mean? So I've been exploring like medication a little bit, but that can be a hit or miss thing. So I've also been looking into like holistic and natural alternatives to medication, just to support me, because it's a battle that I want to win, or a thing that I want to overcome, but you know, to some degree it's out of my control. So I really have to like seek a lot of support and continue to figure out sort of what structure works for me so that I can get things done, because I have an abundance of ideas. And you know, I was talking with my therapist, she's like, yeah, you know, maybe you just like, you know, you don't need to focus on inspiration. And I'm just like, inspiration is not my issue. I'm grateful to have a flood of ideas and things that I'm interested in, and that, you know, I have endless notes. That's another thing that can show up, is like, you know, you're constantly making notes about things, and I'm recording, you know, voice memos and stuff like that, so I can come back to, but I rarely come back to them because it's always kind of like on to the next thing. Yeah.
Wow. First of all, thank you for sharing that. Like, I didn't know that that's how that was showing up for you, like how it's manifesting yourself, and probably how it manifests itself in other people, especially people who are in artist communities, like that to me it was always pegged as this thing where it's like you're just like active all the time, like and it's like, whoa, like it's not that. Like your brain literally is just like constant, sounds like it's just like constantly switching to other things. And hearing you talk made me think a lot about my process and like my perfectionist tendencies. And like I know that I have like perfectionism like at a like there's an actual name for it, And I know I have that at like a super high level where like if I start something and if I don't think that that's going to be like the most amazing thing in the world, then I'll not pursue it. Nobody's or I'll stop it and nobody is going to see it. And then that sort of thing happens too with like the guilt kind of sets in and you're like, oh, I started something again that I didn't finish.
It's terrible. Yeah.
And then you start to get frustrated with yourself and you're just like, why is it I can never finish something? Like, why can I never finish like a project or do what it is that I say that I'm going to do? And then you end up getting in this kind of a loop.
For sure.
That becomes like really frustrating and becomes really hard to get out of. But what I will say that has helped me has been this like commitment to focus on and finish one thing at a time. And even though, because I get into it too, like where I have like a whole bunch of ideas or something and I'm like, oh, you want to do all of the things, but it's just, there's not enough time in the day.
Right.
You know, not every idea that you have is even worth pursuing, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that you have to cultivate as well. It's like this almost like internal clock or like compass of deciding like what is important for me to pursue and to see it through right now in this moment. And so I wonder for you, like I can only talk about it from my perspective because I don't struggle with ADHD. Like I can literally have a whole bunch of things and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on today and this is what I'm going to finish. And I think that it helps me to kind of like get things done. And hearing you talk, I think that one of the things that came up for me was like, well, okay, you have what you have, right? You have ADHD and your mind kind of like jumps from one thing to another. But like even within noticing that the button wasn't there and like sewing the button on, can you celebrate the fact that you sewed the button on? Like, is there a way to kind of like hack, right?
Yeah.
Like hack ADHD in a way that it like, even though it's challenging, like it's still a way to celebrate your wins even within like the diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot and definitely tapping into what's the most urgent or the most exciting for me and learning to prioritize or reprioritize certain things and also setting boundaries for myself. So it's like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one thing right now and I'm going to set a timer for it because like I know that if I don't do that, like either I'm going to just do that and nothing else, or I'm just going to be sort of meandering, you know, throughout the day. So really giving myself set boundaries, allowing myself to, you know, get up and stretch when I complete something, taking that step back to celebrate the work or like look at my progress so far, like, oh wow, like okay, like I've this is coming along nicely, okay, you know, or maybe I feel like I've done all that I can do with this today. I did, you know, 2 blocks of focus work. Now let me reward myself with a show that I like, or you know, let me go on a walk, you know, and not make everything so task oriented or like basically life or death, you know, like because that's a lot of times that's what it feels like, because it can also look or feel like I'm always behind, right? And there's this judgment or this story of you're trying to catch up to this point that is always out of reach, you know, and or you're comparing yourself to what other people got going on. It's just like, man, like if I could just get over this hump. So it has become really important for me to find ways to celebrate myself and to honor the process and the progress that I make. So, okay, yes, I sat down and I wrote for an hour, and maybe I didn't write all the new pages that I wanted to write, but I still started and I liked what I wrote. and it felt good to be in the practice of writing or painting or whatever it was that I was choosing to explore for that day, and having something to show for my effort. So, but it's always evolving, like what that looks like. But I have really been doing my best to celebrate, like, even if it's like small steps, like, okay, like I'm making my way, I'm asking the questions, I'm really thinking about how to support myself. Yeah.
Two things that came up for me while you were just talking. One being the importance of how we talk to ourselves.
Yes.
Because we can be our own worst critic.
Yeah.
And it is so much to our detriment, because I think about it from the perspective of, like, when you're a child and if you do something wrong, not even wrong, right? If you attempt a thing and it doesn't turn out the way that you wanted to, or doesn't turn out how your parents wanted it to. And a lot of times the way that your parents talk to you ends up being the way that you talk to yourself. And so, like, how that parent reacted to you and what you did wasn't perfect, or, it wasn't the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And what it does is it kind of like shuts you off from attempting that thing again.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing tends to happen, at least with me. Like, when I'm working with perfectionism, it's like I can be so mean to myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's a no wonder that you have like an adverse reaction to certain things, because every time it's not perfect.
Yeah.
You're mean to yourself, and then the child that's inside of you is like, oh, I guess I can't. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to attempt that again, because Deshaun is going to be mean to me.
Right.
You know? So it's like one of the things that I've been working on has been that. Like, in the workbook, I'm doing like a cognitive behavioral therapy workbook on perfectionism.
Okay.
And it talks about how important it is to kind of like take that all or nothing thinking that we have and to change it into something else, right? And so instead of saying something along the lines of, well, I didn't finish this task today, I failed, right? That's all or nothing. You didn't fail just because you didn't complete something that you set aside to, for yourself to complete. It's like, instead of saying, oh, I failed, say, well, today I didn't get to complete that thing that I really set out to complete today, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's another day.
Yeah.
And I'll put forward the same amount of effort tomorrow that I did today. And by telling yourself that, like, that leaves your spirit so much room to try again. But if you keep telling your spirit, you keep telling your soul, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
You're just going to keep feeling this. You're not gonna attempt that thing again.
Yeah.
And if you do, you won't attempt it with confidence. It'll be a different version of you, a more meek version, a more fearful version, when really you want to be cultivating a space where you're always speaking to the lion within yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that came up for me. How we speak to each other, to ourselves, is super important. Like, if there's any type of takeaway, like, let's figure out how to talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
And how to give ourselves grace, And then the other thing that came up for me was rewards, right? I used to be the type of person who thought, I can't do nothing until I get that thing done. Like, if that thing ain't done, I don't deserve to go out for a drink. I don't deserve to eat. You know what I'm saying?
Punishment.
Like, and it's the same kind of a thing, right? If you're constantly in a space of punishing yourself, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel punished all the time.
Right.
And so I started figuring out through this wonderful workbook, man. This CBT workbook is so good. But it talks about figuring out what your values are. What do you value? And making sure your actions line up with your values. So a lot of times we put a lot of emphasis on motivation.
Yeah.
Motivation is cool, but if you have decided what you value in life, then your actions should always align with your values, whether you're motivated to do it or not.
Yeah.
So if my value system is about faith, then I'm always going to be doing something that's going to be pouring into my value system of being a person of faith. If my value system is family and a family member needs me, but I'm busy, I'm going to do it anyway because I value my family.
Right.
And so my big thing has been community. Like, I value community, I value my friendships. And I used to be the type of person who would let my friendships linger or go to the wayside based on what I got done that week. And then you look up and you're like, oh, well, I don't have the friendships that I want to have. Well, it's because you value the work over your friendships. And so I have really been starting to really analyze and hone in on what my values are and simply making decisions based on my values and not based on how I feel or based on motivation.
Yeah.
Prime example, this week, it was a mess. I was tired. I wanted to sleep, but I had invited a friend to Jersey to hang out. I didn't finish any of the client work that I wanted to finish. I knew I was going to have to work this weekend. And the old me would be like, hey girl, we got to push this hangout back another 6 months because I got things to do.
Right.
But in the work that I've done with myself, I've decided that friendship and community is something that I value. And so when it was time for me to meet up with her, I put the laptop away and I went and I spent time with my friend. And it wasn't something that I needed to earn.
Right.
It was something that I did because I value it.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes, like with any type of pursuit, sometimes we're always talking about motivation, and some kind of an emotional thing that we need to feel in order to do something. It was like, no, figure out what your values are and just do. And I know sometimes it's easier said than done, but that's something that has helped me.
Yeah, no, I think that's really insightful, thinking about what you value as a source of, are my actions aligning with this? So if I value creativity or creative expression, what am I doing or what am I choosing today, or what are my ways of being to support the thing that I say that I value? And as you were sharing that, it also made me think about how those things can shift from day to day. So it's like, you don't value, friendship or community any less on Tuesday than you did on Monday, but maybe you gotta, shift your priorities depending on if there's a deadline or, just whatever the circumstances are. I think we need to be willing to renegotiate boundaries moment to moment, just because there's so much that occurs like outside of our sphere of influence and control. But that value piece, I think, is super, super rich in terms of how it can guide us in process and in seeing things through, and even as a way of sort of checking in with yourself, like, okay, like, did I do the things that I wanted to according to what I say I value, this week or this day, like having some sort of internal or external checklist for that.
And sometimes we want and this just came to me, sometimes we want the feeling of fulfillment before we do the thing, but actually the fulfillment comes as you're doing the thing. So even checking in about like motivation, it's like, oh, like I don't feel motivated to do that creative thing that I wanted to do, but it's like as you're going, as you're doing the thing, whatever that feeling is that you're looking for, whether that's a feeling of accomplishment or joy or peace or grace, whatever it is that you're looking for, usually it's in the doing. And a lot of times we want it first in order to give us like a clue that's the thing that we should be doing, but actually it's the other way around. We definitely need to put ourselves in position. And I had mentioned this, I don't know if we talked about it in the episode, but there's this quote that I love from Dave Chappelle where he talks about the beauty is in the attempt, and he was, in one of the times he shared it, he was talking about sort of prepping, I think, for hosting SNL or something like that, and thinking about where people were at that time in the world and what people needed in terms of just
what they needed to feel, maybe outside of like grief or pain or frustration. And so, you know, he doesn't know exactly how it's going to go when he goes into these gigs or whatever, but finding beauty and value in what he's attempting to do, which is to bring joy, to bring laughter to people. So I think we need to afford ourselves the opportunity to do those things, you know. Is affirming and inspiring for me on my journey as I'm still like exploring best practices and letting go of certain habits, or, you know, just things that are not serving me in this season or at this time or with the knowledge that I have, because I really want to see things through, and I'm, you know, pretty clear on what it is that I value. And I'm also over having a bunch of incomplete things, or also having people see me in a certain way, right? And like, oh, you know, you're this and you're talented and you're, you know, you're all, but like not feeling like my actions fully align with that. You know, of course I'm doing some things, whatever, but I know that I could be, you know, completing more. I could be honoring the gift more consistently. So and I don't want to be succumbing to the same struggle season after season or time after time. You know, it's just like, you know, we've been given these things and these assignments for a reason, you know, so I don't want that to fall to the wayside or to become just a byproduct of me not being willing to adapt or to have discipline, especially because I think the fulfillment and satisfaction that you talk about with completing a thing and being like, hey, like I actually was able to bring this out of myself, and this isn't something that's just floating around inside of me anymore. I can share this, you know, and this has become fully realized, or being able to look back on the last 6 months and be like, man, like it wasn't easy, but look how much further along I am, you know, because I was able to submit, or I was able to ask questions or ask for support, and I was able to adapt. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate tremendously you sharing, you know, everything that you've been going through and just being open and honest about the space that you're in.
Thank you.
I believe with my whole heart, as you continue to experiment and, you know, listen to spirit and figure out, you know, what works best for you, and showing yourself grace and love and gratitude, I know that you will find the necessary alchemy that is needed for you to kind of be in your best artistic space. Like, I am definitely going to be believing, you know, for you in that area, and, you know, I'm here to support you in whatever way you need, but you are very talented, and you know that. I know that. And we're definitely gonna make sure you get to a space where you're able to finish some of those things, and I truly believe that for you.
Thank you. Amen. Ashe. Amen. You know what I mean? and thank you for being an audience, a supporter, a guide, and a source of inspiration, continued inspiration along this journey, and just for the opportunity for exchange, and you know, cheers to you know, our continued progress and evolution.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You there? Yes, you.
Black, white, purple, orange, cerulean.
We thank you for tuning in.
By the way, you famous yet?
'Cause we not.
We're just two creatives elevating Black expression.
If you dig that,
Follow at Black Person You Famous Yet on
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X.